Architecture. Architecture means designing buildings. It is probably the oldest of the fine arts, and is certainly the most practical, and the most useful. Unlike a painter or sculptor, the architect must think about what his work will eventually be used for and by who. He must make sure that his design will produce a building with enough strength and with the right shape to last for many years. The Taj Mahal, India, was built in 1648 as a tomb for the Muslim emperor's wife. Royal tomb. Minaret. Dome of marble. Investigate the Taj Mahal. Royal tomb. Minaret. Dome of marble. Buildings for work. Buildings where people work, from factories to airports, must be designed to suit each type of industry. These buildings may have to house machines, stock, or aeroplanes. They should also provide good working conditions for staff, and a pleasant atmosphere for any customers. New York skyscrapers, USA. The tops of these New York skyscrapers show designs from different architects. Woolworth Building. General Electric Building. World Trade Center. High-tech exterior. The Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, Hong Kong, reveals its structure. Find out more. Buildings for work. At the start of the industrial age, factories were designed more to fit the machinery than for the convenience or comfort of workers. Only later was it realized that this did not actually lead to maximum production. Peter Behrens. One of the first architects to take factory design seriously was the German Peter Behrens, 1868 to 1940, who was responsible for the General Electricity Company, EG, factories in Berlin, Germany. His EG turbine factory left parenthesis 1909 is massive building, with glass walls set into solid, curved concrete corners. Walter Gropius in 1911, modernist architect Walter Gropius, 1883 to 1969, built the Fagus factory at Alfeld, Liverpool, England, one of the first factories to be built in the international modern style, with wide cubic shapes, large horizontal bands of windows, and corners which stick out without any visible supports. This style, which can be quite ugly when used for housing, lent itself well to factory design, and soon spread. High-tech. Factory design changed little until the 1970s, when the high-tech movement arrived. Its followers focused on the technology of building, putting structural parts on display, so it was a suitable style for modern industry. Buildings like the Inmus microprocessor factory, Went, Wales 1982, actually show off the pillars and cables which are part of their construction. Banks and office buildings. Office buildings and banks are designed to impress people and to look like important business centers. Banks in particular can be very elegant. Some of the major ones have main offices that look like official buildings. However, all offices are designed with much more than just appearance in mind. The architect must make sure that hundreds, or even thousands, of people can work comfortably in the building. In an emergency they must also be able to leave easily and safely. Working in the city. The first office blocks were built in the 1800s. Today, in New York, USA, there are hundreds. Transport centers. The development of modern transport created a new challenge for architects. They had to design attractive, practical, and long-lasting transport centers. Large train and bus stations and airports were needed with space and comfort for increasingly large numbers of passengers. With so many people using these centers, they also had to be safe to enter and easy to leave. Large spaces, like train sheds or hangars, also had to be designed and built. The metro in France, the Parisian metro, or subway, is stylishly designed. This entrance was the work of Hector Guimard. Shops. The main aim of shop design is to attract as many customers as possible. Architects must also think about the way that the goods are displayed, and how much space this leaves for the customers and the sales assistants. They also have to make sure that there are enough extra areas behind the scenes for storage and paperwork. The development of large department stores in the 1800s attracted and inspired many major architects. Harrods is London's most famous shop. It is covered in lights, and is a recognizable landmark for many tourists. Designing and building. A building begins in the architect's mind. Next, the design is put onto paper, and the architect draws a plan of each floor of the building, showing each room with all its windows and doors. Then the elevations are made. These are drawings of the outside of the building, from all sides. Now the builder can begin. Detail designing buildings requires the architect to work on a very large scale and then on details, such as this carved column. CAD stands for computer-aided design. It is used by architects to produce 3D models. Find out more. Designing and building. The starting point of an architect's plan usually comes after the site, type, and cost of the building have been agreed. He or she will have to keep these in mind when designing the building. The architect's plan. The architect's plan includes a note of the materials to be used for the building, whether it is to be a wooden chalet or a steel skyscraper. These must fit the site as well as the purpose of the building. For example, timber is unsuitable for an area of high fire risk. Domes. A dome is a circular, convex roof, often shaped like an overturned bowl. The word comes from Duomo, which is the Italian word for a cathedral. It is because so many Italian cathedrals were built with domed roofs that the word became part of both the English and French languages, and is used to describe this feature. Domes do vary in style depending on the fashion at the time. A small dome is often known as a cupola. Different domes. Although the word dome comes from Italy, domes have since become a feature of many buildings worldwide. Hemispherical dome. Saucer dome. Polyhedral dome. Onion dome. Roofs. A roof covers and protects the top of a building. Roofs can vary in shape and may be flat, sloping, or curved. They are also made from a variety of different materials, from mud to metal. Most roofs are made in three parts. First, the structural supports are put in place. Then a roof deck is added which spans across all of the supports. Finally, a waterproof top layer finishes the roof, making it stronger and longer-lasting in bad weather conditions. Hipped roofs come in all shapes and sizes. During the Renaissance, a style known as the hipped roof was very popular. Hipped roof. Chimney stack. Conical spire of turret. Hipped roof. Fish scale tile. Turret. Windows. Windows are essential for letting in light and air, while keeping out heat or cold. Since ancient times they have developed from small holes with wooden or animal skin shutters to the efficient and often artistic windows we know. Today windows range from glorious stained glass in medieval cathedrals to huge windows which form almost entire walls of modern skyscrapers. Out the window, although windows are everyday objects, there have been many beautiful designs. Anglo-Saxon window. Romanesque window. Oil deboeuf, oxeye, window. Modern window. Vaults and arches. An arch is a curved structure which is very useful for support. The way it's designed makes it particularly strong. The stone at the top of the arch is called the keystone. A vault is an arched ceiling often made of brick, concrete, or stone. Until the 19th century, the arch and vault were the only methods known for making roofs for buildings without using beams. Over the centuries both the arch and the vault have developed in their style and use. Types of vault. There are four main types of vault: the barrel vault, the groin vault, the rib vault, and the fan vault, all shown right. Barrel vault. Groin vault. Rib vault. Fan vault. Forts and castles. Early peoples protected their land with fences, ditches, and banks of earth. Civilized societies began to use hilltop strongholds, forts, and stone castles. These forts and castles provided much stronger defenses and were much better places to attack from as well. Himeji Castle, in Japan, is a medieval castle, which was later altered and extended in the 17th century. Neuschwanstein Castle, Germany. This was built in the 1800s for King Ludwig II of Bavaria. King's private rooms. Main tower. Square tower. Investigate a German castle. King's private rooms. Main tower. Square tower. Knight's house. Singer's hall. Throne hall. Find out more. Forts and castles. The very earliest fortification were simply strong wooden fences around settlements. Digging a ditch outside the fence was the next stage in developing a building that was safe from attack. Iron Age. In Iron Age Europe, hills made ideal sites to fortify. Simple hill forts were surrounded by a single ditch and bank. More complex fortifications like Maiden Castle, Dorset, England, had several, topped by wooden ramparts. Enemies who broke past one line of defense still had to face the next, plus a run of complicated entrances, with drawbridges, gates, dead ends, and traps. Bronze Age. By the Bronze Age, earth ramparts were replaced by solid walls of stone or turf, often strengthened with timbers and covered with wood or stone. Parapets protected the rampart walls. In Bronze Age Scotland, Ireland, and southern Germany, some people lived on fortified artificial islands called crannogs. These lake villages were built out over the water on strong wooden platforms, guarded by wooden fences. The Incas. The Incas of Peru built massive city fortresses. The city of Machu Picchu was built on a series of terraces high in the Andes Mountains. The only way in was by staircases, each of which could be defended against invaders by just a few warriors. North America. In North America, Native American tribes, such as the Iroquois, fortified their villages with circular fences. The fence posts were spaced just far apart enough to let a spear pass through, so the defenders could stab anyone trying to climb inches. Medieval castles. The first real castles were built in Europe in AD-C 800. By AD-C 1100, the early earth and timber materials that had been used were replaced by stone, and castles became much larger. A century later, the Crusaders had brought back tales of Eastern fortifications that had far more advanced designs and structures. These examples were a great influence and inspired further improvements. Tour de Kaiser. The Tour de Kaiser, in France, shown in this model, was built in AD-C 1100. Main entrance. Battlements. Homes. The earliest humans sheltered from the weather and from enemies in caves and woodland. These were good, temporary camps for wandering hunters. With the beginning of agriculture, people needed permanent settlements, in homes rather than shelters. Since then, many different types of house have developed. The Dogon village. These huts in the Dogon village of West Africa are made of natural materials, such as mud. Casa Miller. This unique building is in Barcelona, Spain. It was designed by Antoni Gaudí, originally as a block of flats. Find out more. Homes. The earliest houses ever discovered were built around 9000 BC at Zoichenu, on the present Turkish-Iranian border. They were round huts built of mud and reeds, with cone-like roofs. Neolithic Age. By the Neolithic, New Stone, Age, building in stone was a skilled art. Stone houses at Skerabray in Orkney, Scotland, have survived, because they were buried by a sandstorm 3000 years ago. These strongly built homes have fireplaces, a drainage sewer, complete with inspection chambers, and even fitted stone furniture, from box beds to shelves and cupboards. Separate rooms. One of the first major developments in housing was the creation of separate rooms for different purposes. Primitive shelters have just a single sheltering room, but permanent houses developed separate areas for cooking, sleeping, and so on. Aboriginals. Until recent times, Australian Aboriginals followed a Stone Age lifestyle. Their simple shelters were little more than windbreaks, a few sticks pushed into the ground, with branches and mud piled over them. Animal skins might be laid on top to keep off the rain. Classical homes. In classical times c. 480-323 BC, the Greeks developed an elegant style of architecture which was later taken and developed by the Romans. A typical house was made up of a group of rooms built around a courtyard in the center. This style of architecture, for homes, is known as classical architecture. The Romans later added luxuries such as underfloor heating and plumbing. Fishburne Villa. This villa in England was built in a classical style with paving and marble from Italy. Main courtyard. Audience chamber. Small courtyards. Homes around the world. All over the world people have always lived in very different homes, from the simplest huts to large elegant palaces. Homes are different for many reasons. Things such as the climate, building materials, and the lifestyle of the people require different sorts of building. Traveling people need to be able to move on, and so they often make movable homes, tents, houseboats, or temporary huts. All around the world different styles of homes reflect the lifestyles and cultures of people. Desert Village, Algeria. Zulu Kraal, South Africa. Masai House, Kenya. Longhouse, Oceania. Mansions and palaces. Since ancient times, impressive palaces have displayed a ruler's wealth and power. Often a palace is not only the home of the ruler, but also the center of government. Many have public rooms and accommodation for officials, as well as the ruler's living rooms. By the 16th century, an impressive house, or mansion, had become a way for many rich people to show their wealth and personal taste. Plenty of space. Many mansions have large gardens with space around them, called grounds. Modern homes. During the 20th century, there were many changes in the design of new homes. The introduction of new materials and new techniques changed the way houses were built. Concrete reinforced with steel and new types of glass were used to create a completely different style of home. These new materials gave architects the chance to stop looking backwards to the past for inspiration. Instead of taking old styles and changing them, as they had been doing, they started to try to develop a style of architecture which was more suited to modern life. The Villa Savoy. This villa in France, by Le Corbusier, shown here is a model, stands on stilts and is made of concrete. Curved driveway. Curved glazing. Side view. Curved driveway. Curved glazing. Solarium. Top view. Flat roof. Places of worship. Some peoples, like the Celts, worshipped their gods in natural, wild places, like woods or springs. But city dwellers built places of worship on a grand scale. Built the best temples, synagogues, churches, and mosques, inspired architects to use new designs. Gargoyles. Gothic cathedrals have gargoyles, carved figures, as water spouts, to guard against evil. St. Basil's Cathedral. St. Basil's Cathedral, in Moscow, Russia, has 9 great domes. Small church. Main tower. Colorful dome. Investigate St. Basil's. Small church. Tent-shaped tower of main church. Colorful dome. Find out more. Places of worship. The oldest known temples in existence, dating back to c. 6000 BC, are at Catalhuyuk, Turkey. They were built of mud bricks on a wooden framework, decorated inside with wall paintings and sculpture, and were dedicated to a mother goddess. Mesopotamia. From about 3000 BC, the peoples of Mesopotamia, Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians, built flat-topped, pyramid temples called ziggurats. Their building material was sun-dried mud bricks, though the ziggurat might be finished off with a coating of bricks or tiles. Ancient Egypt. In ancient Egypt until c. 1500 BC, temples were dedicated not to the gods but to dead pharaohs, who were considered gods in their own rights. Naturally, the design of these stone temples was based on that of the pharaoh's palace to make the dead ruler feel at home. Egyptian temple building reached its peak during the New Kingdom, 1570 to 1080 BC. Hebrews. In early Bible times, the Hebrews spent 40 years traveling through the desert, so they worshipped at a portable tent shrine called the Mishkan or tabernacle. When they became a settled people, the tabernacle became the model for Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, c. 959-952 BC. Built of stone, the temple had a flat wooden roof and great bronze pillars standing in front. Stupas and pagodas. The basic Buddhist temple is the Indian stupa. This is a dome-shaped monument that may house relics of Buddha, who founded the religion in the c. 500 BC. Many temples are a mound of earth and some are carved from solid rock. On top of a stupa there is often a spire. In China, the basic Buddhist temple is the Indian stupa. This is a dome-shaped monument that may house relics of Buddha, who founded the religion in the c. 500 BC. Many temples are a mound of earth and some are carved from solid rock. On top of a stupa there is often a spire. In China, Buddhist temples are called pagodas. These have many stories with many highly decorated roofs. Borobudur. This magnificent Buddhist temple is in Java, Indonesia, and dates from AD c. 700. Rock temples. Ancient peoples at first used caves as shrines to worship. Inches later, when they learned to carve rock, they produced their own brand of architecture in natural rocks and cliffs. In some lands, particularly Egypt, India, and China, they went on to cut huge and elaborate temples out of the cliff faces. These monuments were developed in such detail that they are not just rock carvings, but real temple architecture, and are often larger than many other temples. Ellora. At Ellora, in India, rock temples and shrines were cut from the sloping side of a hill, rather than from a cliff. Mosques. Muslims have built mosques, or prayer halls, since AD c. 600. The styles of mosques vary among Islamic countries, but the usual form is a large courtyard, surrounded by colonnades, or arcades. A colonnade is a row of columns, and an arcade is a row of arches. An essential feature is a hollow called the mihrab that is built into the wall facing Mecca. Minarets. Muslims are called to prayer from the high towers outside, which are called minarets. Classical temples. Classical Greek architects aimed for a perfect balance of every shape and proportion in their temples. A Greek temple had an arrangement of columns that surrounded a long space. By using many columns, they produced buildings which were large and majestic without being heavy. The simple design of their temples has remained pleasing to the eye for many centuries, and is thought by many people to be perfect. Temples for the gods. The way that classical temples were built produced beautiful buildings that were thought to be pleasing to the Greek gods. Medieval churches. During the Middle Ages many churches were built in Europe. European churches of this period had high vaults supported by huge columns. In the 10th century, architects took on many Roman and early Christian architectural ideas, such as the basilica, a simple, rectangular church with a central aisle. Byzantine architects added domes. From AD c. 850-1200, architects adopted a style we call Romanesque. This is because its massive walls, semicircular vaults, and round arches are similar to Roman architecture. Abbey of Saint Foy. The Abbey of Saint Foy, Conques, France, c. 1050-1150, has many Romanesque features. Arch. Round arched window. Sloping roof. Spire. Gothic cathedrals. As of c. 1150, a new style called Gothic emerged. In contrast to the styles of buildings which had been built before, Gothic cathedrals were built with plenty of space and were usually well lit. New building techniques at the time brought several changes. The main developments were in the use of vaults and arches, and the introduction of the flying buttress. The flying buttress was a stone or brick support that was used to strengthen a wall. These new techniques produced Gothic features such as pointed arches, tall spires, and large windows. Old St. Paul's Cathedral. This is a model of the Gothic tower of the Old St. Paul's Cathedral, in England, 1087-1666. Sloping roof. Large, arched window. Tower. Spire. Modern churches. Until recent times, churches followed a very similar pattern, with architects often reusing traditional ideas and techniques. Modern architects, however, have rebelled against copying the architecture of the past and seek to create buildings that are suited for today. Medieval architects glorified God with churches built with great attention to detail. Modern architects often prefer a more severe, plain style, using new materials to create this. Stained glass window. Concrete. Metal framework in roof. Notre Dame du Haut. Le Corbusier used concrete for Notre Dame du Haut, in Ranchamp, France. The roof is metal and concrete. Stained glass window. Concrete. Metal framework in roof. Recreational buildings. Since ancient times, people have spent leisure time enjoying sport, drama, and music, or visiting centers like public baths, libraries, and museums. As leisure activities came to involve large numbers of people, they required more spacious buildings. Books. For all public libraries, such as the New York Public Library, are dignified buildings. Opera House. Sydney Opera House, in Sydney, Australia, was built in 1973. Its shape has become a famous landmark. Wall of glass. Opera Hall. Concert Hall. Walls of glass. Investigate Sydney Opera House. Walls of glass. Opera Theatre. Concert Hall. Shell-shaped roofs. Main entrance. Theatres and opera houses. Since classical Greek times, theatres have needed two main features, a place for the performance to occur, and a place for the audience to sit. When opera houses and cinemas were later built, this remained true, although other parts of the design have changed greatly. Verona's Roman amphitheatre, at C30, is the third largest of its kind. Museums and libraries. Until the 19th century, libraries and museums were only found inside monasteries and universities. As soon as they were made available to the general public, suitable buildings were needed to put them in. Architects had to create dignified buildings, as often they were needed to keep a country's national treasures. Because of this, museums and libraries are often very elegant and impressive from the outside, yet inside they must have plenty of space and be incredibly well planned. The Rijksmuseum. The Rijksmuseum, the Netherlands National Museum, built in 1885, is now a tourist attraction. Sports stadiums. The ancient Greeks were the first people to develop spectator sport, as we know it today. They were also the first to build the stadiums, where we watch it. The word comes from the Greek word stade, which is the length of a Greek Olympic race. Today, stadiums are designed to give as many people as possible a clear view of all the action. Some stadiums seat thousands of people. Moore Park, Sydney. The stadium in Moore Park, Australia, has space for thousands of people. Government buildings. Buildings where a country's government business takes place range from Senate houses and parliament buildings to town halls, law courts, and prisons. In medieval times, government buildings looked very much like palaces. Today, they are still generally large and impressive, but modern government buildings are more practical. Westminster. Westminster, in London, England, is the country's government centre. U.S. Capitol. In the USA, the country's laws are made in the Capitol, a beautifully decorated building in Washington, D.C. Main entrance. Dome. Government rooms. Main entrance. Dome. Government rooms. Investigate the U.S. Capitol. Find out more. Government buildings. The Capitol, Washington, D.C., where the U.S. Congress meets, was rebuilt several times between 1793 and 1867. Its huge dome is 30 m, 98 foot, wide and made mainly of cast iron. The design of the Capitol was inspired by a Roman temple called the Maison Carrée, Nimes, France. Westminster. When England's Parliament building, the Palace of Westminster in London, burned down in 1834, it was agreed that only the Gothic or Elizabethan styles were suitable for its replacement. Gothic 1, and the new Houses of Parliament are a vast structure, with a 290 m, 950 foot, frontage along the River Thames, and a 97 m, 318 foot, clock tower which houses the famous Big Ben. Inside is a maze of offices, lobbies, debating chambers, committee rooms, libraries, and restaurants. The United Nations. The United Nations headquarters building in New York, USA, was designed by an international board of architectural consultants. It is made up of three main structures: the General Assembly, which encloses a vast auditorium, the Conference Building, which houses council rooms and meeting places, and the Secretariat, a 39-story, steel and glass office block. College buildings. Since the Middle Ages, architects have built beautiful and imposing colleges, or universities. They were closely linked with the church, and learning was only for the very privileged few. Today, some of the older colleges are still used, such as Oxford and Cambridge, in England. Many of these buildings need a lot of money to keep them repaired and comfortable for students to study in today. Modern colleges are built with the latest techniques, and have inspired architects to develop a new style which is more suited to modern student life. Learning style. Many colleges are built in a grand style and reflect the importance put on education at the time.